When I sat in that lawyer's office and saw my ex-husband had left me exactly $1 in his will, I thought it was his final way of spitting in my face. I was wrong. That dollar was a message. Stay with me till the end, because what happened next turned my anger into something much bigger than I could have imagined. And if my story moves you, I'd be grateful if you shared it so others can hear it too. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 42 years old, and until a few years ago, I was married to Daniel Reed, a man who seemed like he had it all together. He was a wealthy contractor, charming in public, and the kind of man everyone thought was perfect. For 15 years, I was his wife. I believed we had a strong marriage, until the day I found out about Vanessa. Vanessa was 15 years younger than me, a woman who smiled sweetly in public, but made sure I knew she had taken my place. Daniel had been seeing her for years, lying to me while building a life with her behind my back. The betrayal alone was crushing, but what came after was worse. Daniel made sure the divorce worked in his favor. He had the best lawyers, and he used every trick in the book to make me walk away with almost nothing. I left our big home and ended up in a small, worn-down apartment. While he and Vanessa enjoyed luxury trips, expensive dinners, and a brand new house, I was budgeting for groceries and counting coins for gas. It took everything in me to rebuild a little piece of my life. I got a job, kept to myself, and tried not to think about them. But the anger never really went away. Then, a year after our divorce, I got a phone call I didn't expect. Daniel had died. A sudden heart attack, gone in an instant. I wasn't sure how to feel. Part of me thought maybe this was the end of the pain he'd caused me. A week later, I got a formal invitation to the reading of his will. I almost didn't go, but some part of me needed to see the final chapter of our story. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of leather and old paper. Daniel's family sat in a row, their expressions cold. And there she was, Vanessa, sitting tall and proud, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The lawyer began reading. When he got to my name, he paused and looked up briefly before saying, "To my former wife, Emily Carter, I leave the sum of $1. The room went quiet for a second, then I heard it, soft chuckles from Daniel's relative. Vanessa didn't laugh, but the smug little smile on her face said enough. I sat there, my cheeks burning, holding back tears. I didn't know it yet, but that single dollar wasn't the insult it seemed. It was the start of something Daniel had kept hidden from all of them. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, a cheap bottle of red wine open on the table. The glass in my hand felt heavy, and every sip seemed to burn my throat. I kept replaying the scene from earlier, the smirks, the muffled laughter, Vanessa's satisfied look. That single dollar had felt like a slap I couldn't block. I told myself to let it go, but the humiliation clung to me like smoke. I switched off the lamp and sat in the dark, staring at the city lights outside my window. Somewhere out there, Daniel's family was probably celebrating his will, dividing everything between themselves. I imagined Vanessa toasting with champagne in that massive house Daniel once promised we'd grow old in. The thought twisted in my stomach until I couldn't sit still anymore. I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't quiet down. The next morning, I was still groggy when my phone rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. For a moment, I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. "Emily Carter?" a deep voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. "This is Thomas Grant. I was Daniel Reed's attorney for many years." My body stiffened. "If this is about the will, I already heard it loud and clear," I said, ready to hang up. "Actually," he continued, "this isn't about the official will. There's something Daniel left for you privately. It wasn't part of the documents read yesterday." I didn't say anything at first. My mind immediately jumped to the worst possibilities. Some cruel joke from beyond the grave, a final twist of the knife. "Why would he leave me anything privately?" I asked. "I can't discuss details over the phone," Thomas replied, "but he left very specific instructions that I give it to you in person. If you're willing, I'd like you to come to my private office this afternoon." I hesitated. My instincts told me to walk away. Daniel had never done anything in the last years of our marriage that wasn't self-serving or manipulative. Why would this be any different? Still, something about Thomas's tone didn't sound like a trick. There was no mockery in it, just quiet insistence. "Fine," I said finally. "Text me the address." After the call ended, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. The question burned in my mind. What could Daniel possibly want me to have that he didn't want Vanessa or his family to know about? By the time I was getting ready to leave, my curiosity had overtaken my suspicion. Whatever it was, it had been hidden for a reason. And if Daniel had kept it out of Vanessa's reach, I needed to know why. Thomas's office was nothing like the sleek, glass-walled law firms I'd imagined he might work in. It was tucked away on the second floor of an old brick building, the kind with creaky wooden stairs and the faint smell of coffee that had been brewing since morning. The waiting room was small, lined with bookshelves stacked with legal binders and dusty hardcovers. He stepped out from behind his desk as soon as I walked in. "Emily," he greeted me with a firm handshake and a look that was more cautious than warm. "I'll be honest," I said, crossing my arms. "I almost didn't come. If this is some leftover cruelty Daniel cooked up before he died." "It isn't," Thomas cut in gently. "Please have a seat." I lowered myself into the chair opposite his desk. He didn't waste time with small talk. From the top drawer, he pulled out a large, cream-colored envelope. The paper looked old, its edges slightly yellowed. My heart gave a strange jolt when I saw the handwriting. Daniel's, neat and deliberate, the same way he used to write shopping lists or notes for the fridge. "He told me to give you this only after the will reading," Thomas explained. "And only to you." I stared at it for a long moment before sliding my finger under the flap and breaking the seal. The letter inside was written in ink, the strokes confident, almost too confident for a man who had known his end was near. "Emily," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. That $1 in the will wasn't an insult. It was my way of getting Vanessa and my family to drop their guard. There's something only you can find. You earned it." I paused, my breath caught between anger and disbelief. Earned it? After everything he'd put me through? My fingers tightened on the page as I continued reading. On the back of the letter, taped carefully, was a small brass key. Next to it, in faint pencil, was an address I didn't recognize. I set the letter down and looked at Thomas. "What is this supposed to mean?" "I don't know," he said truthfully. "He didn't tell me. Just that you'd understand what to do when you saw it." I let out a bitter laugh. "Understand? This is just like him. Cryptic messages, half-truths, making me play games even after he's dead." Thomas studied me for a moment, then said, "If you want, I can come with you. Make sure it's safe." The thought of having someone there was tempting, but something inside me bristled at the idea. This felt personal, too personal. "No," I said finally, slipping the key and letter into my bag. "If he wanted me to find it, I'll do it myself." As I walked out of Thomas's office, the address burned in my mind, an unanswered question I suddenly couldn't stop myself from chasing. The GPS led me north, out of the city and into the slow, winding roads of upstate New York. At first, the scenery was familiar: gas stations, little diners, and rows of houses with peeling paint. But as the miles stretched on, the towns grew smaller, the spaces between them wider. The road narrowed, twisting through thick woods where sunlight barely broke through the branches. I drove for hours, my curiosity battling with a deep unease. Daniel had never once mentioned owning property outside the city, and during our marriage, he was the type to brag about every new acquisition. The fact that this place had been kept secret, it made my grip on the steering wheel tighten. After another turn, the trees suddenly opened up to reveal a lonely stretch of road. That's when I saw it, a rusted mailbox leaning at an angle, the numbers barely visible but matching the address in Daniel's handwriting. Behind it stood an old wrought iron gate, tall and imposing, with curls of metal twisting into faded pattern. The gate was locked, the kind of lock that looked older than me. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under my shoes. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. I pulled the brass key from my bag and tried it in the smaller side gate. It clicked open with a reluctant groan, like it hadn't been turned in years. The path beyond was more of a driveway than a walkway, but it was overgrown with weeds that brushed against my legs as I made my way forward. Potholes dotted the ground, and wildflowers sprouted between cracks in the asphalt. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the faint call of a bird I didn't recognize. As I rounded a bend, the trees parted again, and I stopped dead in my tracks. At the end of the drive stood a massive Victorian estate, its once grand exterior now weathered by time. The roof sloped high, lined with ornate trim, and several of the tall windows were clouded with dust. A wide porch stretched across the front, its railings sagging in places. The whole place seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for someone to bring it back to life, or finally let it fall apart. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the breeze. In all our years together, Daniel had never brought me here, never even hinted that this place existed. And yet, here it was, hidden away like a secret too dangerous to share. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the house. It felt like I was looking at a piece of Daniel's life that didn't fit with the man I thought I knew. My pulse quickened, not with fear exactly, but with the unsettling awareness that whatever I found inside could change everything I thought I understood about him, and about us. The front door creaked loudly as I pushed it open, the sound echoing through the stillness. A faint smell of dust and something older, like wood left to age in the dark, hung in the air. The light from the porch spilled across the entryway, revealing a grand staircase to my left and a long hallway stretching toward the back of the house. I stepped inside slowly, my shoes leaving faint prints on the dusty floorboard. The air was cool and dry, and every sound I made seemed too loud. Most of the furniture was hidden under white sheets, their shapes ghostly in the dim light. I brushed one aside from a tall armchair and coughed as a cloud of dust swirled up. Along the hallway, heavy framed paintings hung crooked on the walls, landscapes of rolling hills, portraits of stern-looking strangers. The colors had faded, but the gold frames still clung to a sense of grandeur. I wandered into the kitchen, expecting to find it bare, but it looked strangely ready for use. There were canned goods stacked neatly in a cupboard, though the labels were faded. Plates and glasses sat in the dish rack, a thin layer of dust covering them. It was as if someone had planned to live here and then walked away without warning. A strange unease crept over me. This wasn't just a property Daniel had forgotten. Someone had taken care to keep it stocked, at least for a while. I began opening drawers and cabinets, searching for anything that might explain the place. Most were empty except for old utensils, scraps of paper, and a box of matches. In the living room, I found a desk with a drawer stuck halfway. With some effort, I forced it open, only to find it empty except for a single yellowed envelope with no writing on it. Inside was nothing but a folded grocery list in Daniel's handwriting, odd but not useful. Upstairs, the master bedroom was large but barren, save for a heavy bed frame draped in a dusty sheet and 2 nightstands with their drawers ajar. I scanned the room until my eyes caught on the closet door. When I opened it, a small brass key hung from a hook on the inside, swaying slightly as if it had been waiting for me. I took it, my heart pounding harder now. In the far corner of the bedroom, partially hidden beneath a faded quilt, was a large wooden trunk. The lock on the front was old but sturdy. I slid the key in, it turned easily. The lid creaked open, and inside were neat stacks of documents bound with twine, old photographs curled at the edges, and several ledgers with Daniel's handwriting on the covers. I ran my fingers over them, a mix of curiosity and dread building in my chest. Whatever was in these papers, I knew it wasn't meant for just anyone to find, and it was the reason Daniel had brought me. I knelt beside the trunk, the wood cold beneath my fingers, and began pulling out the documents one by one. The first bundle was a stack of property deeds, addresses I didn't recognize, scattered across different states. Some were small plots of land, others large commercial buildings. Every one of them was in Daniel's name, but I had never heard of them before. Beneath that were crisp manila folders stuffed with bank statements, each stamped with names of foreign banks I couldn't pronounce. My eyes darted to the balances, numbers so large they didn't seem real. Millions tucked away in accounts halfway across the world. I kept digging. The ledgers were thick, with Daniel's tidy handwriting filling every page. But the neatness didn't disguise what they were. Records of deals that shouldn't have existed. Payments to city officials, inflated contracts, hidden cash transactions. It was like opening a diary of crimes, each line a quiet admission of corruption. A sick feeling spread through me. I had always known Daniel liked to push boundaries in business. But this was something else entirely. This wasn't clever negotiation. This was years of deception, built on lies and money funneled where it didn't belong. At the bottom of the trunk, between 2 leather-bound ledgers, I found a single folded sheet of paper. My heart quickened when I saw my name written across the front in Daniel's handwriting. I unfolded it slowly. If you're reading this, Emily, you know I trusted no one but you. This estate and everything in it is yours now. They'll never see it coming. I stared at the words, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Trusted me? The man who had left me with nothing, humiliated me in court, had apparently been keeping all of this hidden for me? Or was this just another layer in one of his twisted games? I looked around the room. The heavy furniture, the faded curtains, the silence that seemed to press in from all sides. If this letter was the truth, then everything in this house, everything tied to these papers, was mine now. The money, the properties, the estate, it was all sitting here untouched. It hit me then. Vanessa didn't know. His family didn't know. They had laughed at me, pitted me, written me off as the ex-wife who got a single dollar. Meanwhile, the real fortune was locked away here, hidden behind rusted gates and overgrown weeds. I sat back on my heels, the letter trembling in my hand. Maybe Daniel had left this out of guilt. Maybe he wanted to right his wrongs without his family's greedy fingers getting in the way. Or maybe, even in death, he wanted to see me win in a way they could never understand. Whatever his reason, one thing was certain, this secret was mine now. And I wasn't about to let anyone take it. I sat in the master bedroom for what felt like hours, the papers spread out around me. My mind wouldn't settle. Anger burned hot in my chest. Anger for all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, for the way Daniel had stripped me of my dignity in court, for the smug faces at that while reading. But under the anger was something heavier. Grief. Not for the man he became, but for the man I thought he was. For the life I believed we were building, the trust one had given without question. A part of me wanted to walk away from it all. This was a mess, and I had spent years cleaning up after Daniel's messes. The thought of getting tangled in whatever illegal network he had built made my skin crawl. But then I thought of Vanessa, of Daniel's family, sitting there with their smirks, convinced I was living in some cramped apartment with nothing to my name. The image of their shock, of their confusion, started to take root. I stood and walked back toward the study, a room I had only glanced at earlier. It was smaller than the others, lined with shelves of old law books and heavy wooden furniture. Behind the desk, something caught my eye, a square outline in the wall, faintly visible beneath the faded wallpaper. I pulled the edge of the paper back and found a safe, the metal cold under my fingertips. My heart raced as I tried the brass key from my bag. It slid in perfectly. One turn, and the door swung open. Inside, the light from the window glinted off neat stacks of $100 bills, bound with paper bands. I reached in and picked one up, crisp, fresh, unmarked. There were dozens more just like it, filling the shelves inside the safe. Beneath the cash were several small velvet pouches. I opened one, and my breath caught. Gold bars, heavy and warm in my hands. I stood there, staring at it all, the weight of the gold grounding me in a way I didn't expect. This wasn't just a fortune, it was power. Power Daniel's family thought I didn't have. Power Vanessa couldn't imagine I'd touch. I knew then that I was keeping everything. Every dollar, every property, every gold bar. But I also knew I wasn't going to flash it recklessly. No, my revenge would be slower, sharper. They would see glimpses, little signs that I was no longer the woman they could laugh at. They would wonder, gossip, and drive themselves crazy trying to figure it out. I closed the safe, slid the key back into my bag, and looked around the study one last time. This place wasn't just Daniel's hidden estate anymore. It was my battlefield, and the war had only just begun. I waited a week before making my first move. If I acted too quickly, Vanessa might suspect something. Instead, I let the humiliation from the will reading echo in her memory, making her think I was still beaten down and struggling. Then, one morning, I picked up my phone and called her. She answered on the third ring, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Emily, what a surprise. I forced a shaky sigh, layering my voice with just enough vulnerability to sound convincing. Vanessa, I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important. I'm about to lose my apartment. I've been behind on rent, and they're threatening to evict me. There was a pause on her end, and I could almost hear the smirk forming. That's unfortunate, she said slowly, but I suppose I can help. I wouldn't want you ending up on the street. When she offered $500, she made sure to phrase it like a favor she'd boast about later. Consider it a little pity gift, she said. I swallowed my pride and accepted. Thank you. I promise I'll pay you back someday. After we hung up, I deposited the money into my account, but I didn't touch a single cent. Instead, I started planting small seeds. A new handbag casually left in the background of a social media photo, a lunch at a high-end cafe where I knew one of her friends would see me. I didn't flaunt it outright, just enough to make people wonder how I could afford it. The real trap came next. Using a burner email account, I reached out to one of Daniel's old business rivals, someone I knew had been burned by one of his shady deals. I fed him just enough information to make it look like Vanessa was trying to access certain offshore accounts. Nothing too detailed, just breadcrumbs. Within days, I could feel the shift. Rumors started spreading in their circles. People whispered about Vanessa poking around in places she shouldn't. Her calls to some of Daniel's old partners went unanswered. She even showed up uninvited at one of their offices, demanding answers, which only fueled the gossip further. I watched from the sidelines, pretending to be completely uninvolved. When I bumped into one of Daniel's distant cousins at a cafe, I made sure to act surprised when she mentioned Vanessa had been acting a little nervous lately. I shrugged, feigning innocence, and said, "Well, I guess handling all of Daniel's affairs must be stressful." Every day, Vanessa's paranoia grew. She started asking mutual acquaintances if they'd heard anything about me, if I had been in contact with anyone from Daniel's business days. I kept my tone calm and clueless whenever word got back to me. The beauty of it was simple. She didn't have proof of anything, but I had planted enough doubt to make her feel like her world was closing in. And the more she panicked, the easier it would be to pull her apart piece by piece. The night of Vanessa's charity gala, I made sure every detail of my appearance sent the right message. The gown was a deep emerald silk that clung in all the right places, paired with a diamond necklace that caught the light with every movement. Both had been purchased with gold I'd quietly sold from Daniel's hidden stash. My hair was swept up elegantly, and my makeup was flawless, a version of myself Vanessa had never seen since the divorce. When I arrived, the valet's eyes widened slightly as he opened the door to the sleek black car I'd rented for the evening. I stepped out slowly, letting the cameras from the local press catch the shimmer of the diamonds at my throat. The ballroom was buzzing when I walked in. Laughter, champagne glasses clinking, the soft hum of an expensive jazz band. Vanessa stood at the center, glowing in her designer gown, surrounded by the city's elite. But when her gaze landed on me, the smile froze on her face. "Emily," she said, her voice carrying just enough strain to make me smile. What a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here. I tilted my head slightly. Oh, I received an invitation. I thought it would be fun. Her eyes scanned my outfit, lingering on the diamonds. That's quite a necklace. Must have cost a fortune. I let a slow smirk spread across my face. Daniel always said I was better at keeping secrets than. The color drained from her cheeks. For a moment, she looked like she might actually drop her champagne glass. Her perfectly rehearsed composure faltered, and I saw the flicker of realization. She knew I had found something, even if she didn't know exactly what. Before she could recover, I excused myself with a polite smile and drifted toward another group, leaving her standing there in the middle of the room. I didn't have to say another word. The damage was done. People were watching, whispering. I caught more than one curious glance in my direction, followed by someone leaning in to murmur in Vanessa's ear. By the end of the night, she was visibly rattled, trying too hard to laugh at jokes, her eyes darting toward me every few minutes. I could almost hear the questions building in her mind. What did I know, how much, and who else might I have told? Meanwhile, the other half of my plan was quietly unfolding. Over the past weeks, I'd redirected funds from accounts Daniel's family thought they controlled. Nothing obvious enough to cause an immediate panic, just enough to make the numbers shrink slowly, mysteriously. Now, I heard from a mutual contact that they'd begun turning on each other, accusing one another of mishandling the money. As I left the gala, stepping back into the cool night air, I felt lighter than I had in years. I hadn't needed to raise my voice or make a scene. I'd simply planted the right seeds and let them grow. And now, Vanessa's perfect little world was starting to crack. Months passed, and the hidden estate transformed from a dusty, forgotten relic into a place that felt entirely my own. The overgrown driveway was cleared, the gardens replanted, and the peeling paint on the grand Victorian walls was replaced with a soft cream that caught the afternoon light. Each room I renovated felt like reclaiming a piece of the dignity Daniel had tried to strip away. The master bedroom became airy and warm, with tall windows thrown open to let in the breeze. The study, once shadowed and cold, was now lined with shelves of books I loved, not the heavy legal volumes Daniel had left behind. Even the kitchen, with its old dishes and canned goods, was rebuilt into a bright, modern space where I could cook and watch the gardens bloom outside. One evening, as the last of the summer sun dipped behind the trees, I invited Thomas Grant for dinner. He arrived carrying a bottle of wine and wearing a faintly curious smile. "You've been busy," he said, glancing around the gleaming hallway as I led him inside. "Busy is an understatement," I replied. "I owe you for keeping Daniel's secret, and for trusting me with it." Over dinner, I thanked him directly. "If you'd told anyone else about that letter, things might have gone very differently." Thomas nodded. "Daniel made me promise." I wasn't sure why until I saw the look on your face that day. We didn't linger on the past. Instead, we enjoyed the meal, talking about everything except Daniel Reed. Later, after he left, I stood on the upstairs balcony with a glass of wine in hand. The estate was quiet, the night air scented with the roses I'd planted by the gate. From here, I could see the long driveway, the trees swaying gently, the gates that now swung only for me. I didn't think about forgiveness. Daniel hadn't earned that. What I felt instead was victory. Not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet, satisfying knowledge that I had won in a way they could never undo. Vanessa had lost her luxury home months ago, forced to sell it when her finances mysteriously unraveled. Daniel's family, once smug and untouchable, had torn themselves apart over dwindling business funds that they could never trace. They all still believed I had walked away from that will with a single dollar to my name. The truth was locked away, safe and untouchable. The money, the gold, the properties, all mine, all hidden behind the same wrought iron gates that kept their greedy hands out. I finished my wine, descended the stairs, and stepped outside. The gates closed with a low, final clang, and I slid the heavy lock into place. The world thought I'd been left with nothing. I smiled in the dark, knowing the truth was far richer and far sweeter than they could ever imagine. So, what's your take? Was Emily right to keep Daniel's secret fortune all to herself, or should she have come clean to his family? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear them. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss what's coming next.